Jimmy Kimmel is back on air, but something shocking just happened. In his first week, he lost 70% of his viewers overnight. The show that once ruled late night is now crumbling, and Disney is the one propping him up. The mainstream media will not tell you this, but the numbers don't lie. Viewers are walking away, small channels are beating him, and his audience has spoken. Stay with us because we are breaking down the real reason behind Kimmel's collapse and why it could change late-night television forever. Music. In just 1 week, Jimmy Kimmel saw his ratings tumble by a staggering 70%, and this time, there is no scapegoat to blame. The Walt Disney Company flexed its muscle, pressuring stations that hesitated to bring Jimmy back on air, and, unsurprisingly, they ultimately relented. But here's the twist. This outcome might actually be a silver lining. Late-night hosts can no longer point fingers at the so-called Orange Man or whisper about conspiracies targeting left-leaning comedians. The responsibility now rests squarely on Disney and their team, who are left managing a struggling Jimmy with no one else to fault. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Pro Channel on this fine Sunday morning. If you are tuning in right as this video drops, we are thrilled to have you here as we serve up the truth. Clear, unfiltered, and delivered straight to you. No fluff, no distractions. Let us break down everything you need to know, because the numbers, the drama, and the reality of the situation are all intertwined in a story that the mainstream media does not want to tell. Let us start with the numbers. On September 23rd, Jimmy Kimmel drew in roughly 3 million viewers for his return. That may sound like a decent bump, but here is where the real story begins. By the very next night, viewership plummeted by approximately 2.4 million, according to Nielsen ratings cited by Outkick. That means Greg Gutfeld actually beat Kimmel in his second night back. In other words, what initially looked like a spike turned into a free fall, a 60 to 70% overnight collapse. In plain terms, most of the audience that tuned in to see what all the fuss was about immediately vanished. Kimmel, once the king of his time slot, was now staring down the same slump he faced before his brief suspension. This is where we start seeing the larger implications. If he dropped 60 to 70% of viewers in one night, what do you think happened by the Friday when the affiliates returned the show to the airwaves? While the full Friday ratings are not yet publicly released, the trends are already clear. A reasonable assumption is that Kimmel probably dropped another 50% beyond that initial 60 to 70%. What does this mean in practical terms? Simply put, Jimmy Kimmel is performing worse than he ever has in his career, and the trajectory is only downward. He has alienated the right-leaning audience, the center is offended by his abrasive and often toxic commentary, and the left, his core base, is already maxed out. There is literally nowhere else for him to grow. The audience has nowhere to expand, only room to shrink. Storm Robinson over on X summarized it bluntly. Jimmy Kimmel might see what could technically be considered his highest ratings for a week, but the reality is grim. His show will likely be canceled at the end of his contract. Disney, fanatic in its drive to keep radical programming alive, may choose to continue airing him, but the numbers paint a clear picture. The show is failing, and audiences are walking away. Consider this for perspective. In 2025, Kimmel has a 0.16 rating. When he took over the show, he had a 0.71 rating. That is a decline of over 4 times. He now holds less than 25% of the audience he commanded at his peak. And this calculation comes before we account for the broader public backlash, the cultural and social pushback that sees average Americans turning against his brand of humor and commentary. Disney's decision to force him back on air only exacerbates the problem, because curiosity may bring in viewers for a first night, but no one is sticking around. This is the challenge Disney now faces. They have revived a show that is, for all intents and purposes, dead. Small YouTube channels regularly outperform him. By the end of his tenure, Disney could be bleeding tens of millions of dollars on a program that cannot compete in its own time slot, consistently losing to digital creators and niche content. Yet the network will likely continue to present Kimmel as a cultural icon, a significant figure in late-night television, because admitting otherwise would require acknowledging failure. Let us also talk about the media's role in this. Will Rolling Stone, CNN, or other major outlets report on this dramatic collapse? No, they are not interested in transparency. Their focus is power and narrative control, not honesty or clarity. The truth, the real truth, is that Kimmel's decline is a stark lesson in audience behavior, political fatigue, and the fragility of celebrity in modern media. Disney's forced return of Kimmel underscores that this is no longer about ratings, humor, or even the show itself. It is about ideology, influence, and asserting a form of control over what airs on national television, regardless of the market response. So, what does this mean for viewers? You have a choice. You can continue to support the programming and the network, or you can step away, recognize the decline in quality, and make your own decisions about media consumption. The numbers speak for themselves. A 70% drop in 1 week is unprecedented in modern late-night television. It is wild, it is dramatic, and it is something that cannot be ignored. And for those keeping score on the corporate side, the implications are just as stark. Disney's decision to prioritize ideology over business sense may cost them dearly. Executives may try to sugarcoat it, paint Kimmel as a stalwart of late-night comedy, or frame the decline as a temporary setback. But the data does not lie. Over 4 times drop in ratings, millions of viewers walking away, small online content creators outperforming him, the signs are clear. This is a cautionary tale for networks that believe brand loyalty or ideological alignment can replace quality, relevance, and audience engagement. In short, Jimmy Kimmel is back, but the viewers are not. Disney has brought back a ghost of a show that once held relevance. They have invested in a man whose appeal has shrunk dramatically, relying on brand loyalty and political alignment rather than content or creativity. The mainstream media will not tell you this story. They have no incentive to. But here on this channel, we lay it all out. The numbers, the trends, the corporate decisions, and the cultural consequences. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes open, watch the ratings as they unfold, and remember one thing: audiences vote with their attention, and they have already spoken. Kimmel's 70% drop is not just a number, it is a statement. Disney may continue to air him, but the public has made its verdict clear. The show is in decline, and unless something dramatically changes, there is nowhere for it to go but down music. And yes, folks, we are ready to jump into the headlines, so go ahead and hit that like button before we dive in. Here's the latest from CNN Business. Reported by Brian the Forehead Stelter and Liam Riley, the Jimmy Kimmel blackout is officially over. Nexstar and Sinclair, the ABC stations that tried to push back, claiming Jimmy Kimmel is too offensive for our markets, have now folded. We said from the start that their resistance was unlikely to succeed, and here is why. Last week, we shared an article from Charlie Gasparino, formerly of Fox Business, now writing for the New York Post. Gasparino revealed that Disney was ready to go nuclear over the situation. Remember our video explaining how Disney could have pulled Monday Night Football, tried to replace stations, and even considered preventing the Super Bowl from airing? Disney was prepared to do whatever it took. Could they have legally won against Sinclair or Nexstar in court? Maybe not, but that gamble was not worth taking, because losing viewers access to football would have sparked outrage. CNN confirms that the blackout of Jimmy Kimmel Live is over. Sinclair and Nexstar, the 2 major station groups that had preempted the talk show earlier this month, are now allowing it to return to their ABC affiliates as of last Friday. And that Friday matters because the stats we are about to share show exactly why there is no excuse for what happened. Rolling Stone reported, Kimmel thanks Trump for record ratings amidst station boycott. Could not have done it without you. Charisma Mutarang highlighted that even with 20% of ABC affiliates not airing the show on Tuesday, the host's return was being celebrated. But here is the thing. They wanted to hype the return, show the headlines, but hide what came after. Everyone tuned in, wondering, would Kimmel apologize? Would he double down on attacking the right? And here's the reality. Reported by Marvin Montenro at Park Place, Jimmy Kimmel's ratings cratered after a brief comeback surge. Yet, the major Hollywood trades and legacy media outlets barely cover this. Disney and ABC spent much of the week promoting the big return, but the actual numbers tell a different story, a story the mainstream does not want you to see. On September 23rd, Jimmy Kimmel drew in about 3 million viewers, but that spike was short-lived. By the very next night, viewership plunged by roughly 2.4 million, according to Nielsen ratings cited by Outkick. In other words, Greg Gutfeld actually beat Kimmel on his second night back, marking a staggering 60 to 70% overnight collapse. Put simply, most of the audience that tuned in to see what the fuss was about immediately disappeared, leaving Kimmel back in the same slump he was in before his suspension. Now consider this. If he lost 60 to 70% of viewers in one night, what do you think happened by the Friday when the affiliates finally returned him to the airwaves? While we do not yet have the full Friday ratings, the first night numbers give us a strong clue. If he dropped 60 to 70% on night 2, it is reasonable to assume he probably lost another 50% by Friday. This would mean Kimmel was likely performing even worse than before his hiatus. Why? Because he had already alienated much of the right-leaning audience, and now the center felt turned off by his tone and antics. The left was already his base. In short, there was nowhere else to grow, only room to fall. Storm Robinson on X put it bluntly. Kimmel might see his highest ratings of his career over the next week or so, but then the show will likely be canceled at the end of his contract. Disney has become almost fanatical about keeping its radical programming on air, sometimes at the expense of ratings, but even Bob Iger might be thinking, I will return Jimmy and let some other executive deal with the fallout. Not because of censorship, he notes, but simply because the show is failing, audiences are tuning out. To put this in perspective, in 2025, Jimmy Kimmel has a 0.16 rating. When he first took over, it was 0.71. That is a drop of over 4 times, meaning he now retains less than 25% of the audience he had at his peak. And this was before the public backlash fully took hold. After being forced back on the air by Disney, the initial curiosity may bring viewers in, but they are unlikely to stick around. People will tune in once, see it is still poor, and walk away. That is Jimmy Kimmel today, down 60% and sliding. What makes this collapse so noteworthy is that it is happening in a market where late-night television has already been under pressure. Streaming platforms, digital content, YouTube, and social media channels are competing for attention at unprecedented levels. Audiences no longer feel obligated to watch network television because it airs at a certain time. They can choose content that aligns with their interests, their values, and their attention spans. In that environment, any misstep, especially one as glaring as Kimmel's politically charged, abrasive style, can have immediate consequences. And make no mistake, the audience has noticed. Many people who once casually tuned in to Kimmel's show now see it as toxic or predictable. His jokes, political commentary, and monologues have lost the charm they once had. He is no longer seen as a cultural touchstone. He has become, for many viewers, a polarizing figure who represents a certain brand of late night that no longer resonates with mass audiences. When ratings collapse like this, it is more than just numbers. It is a reflection of cultural relevance. Kimmel's decline is a warning sign of what happens when a show loses touch with its audience. Furthermore, this is a clear example of how corporate decisions can backfire. Disney's insistence on forcing Kimmel back on air may have satisfied internal ideological goals, but it risks turning him into a liability. Executives might defend the move, citing loyalty, brand consistency, or political alignment, but the numbers do not lie. The show is underperforming dramatically, and every day that it remains on air without improvement is a day of lost viewership, lost revenue, and lost credibility. Even beyond the ratings, this situation highlights the fragility of celebrity-driven programming. Kimmel has long relied on his personality and legacy to maintain his audience. But when that personality is perceived as toxic, outdated, or abrasive, even brand loyalty cannot save the numbers. The marketplace now speaks louder than any network executive. If audiences are not watching, the show is failing. End of story. In short, Jimmy Kimmel's trajectory is a textbook example of decline in real time. From 3 million viewers to a sharp drop of 2.4 million in a single night, and potentially more than half of that remaining audience disappearing by Friday. The message is clear. Viewers have turned the page. The show's relevance is fading, and Disney's attempts to prop it up may not be enough to reverse the trend. The combination of alienated viewers, a saturated media landscape, and corporate missteps has created a perfect storm for decline. This is a moment that speaks to larger trends in entertainment and media. Audiences are no longer passive consumers. They are active participants in shaping culture through what they choose to watch and what they choose to abandon. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings collapse is a stark reminder that even long-standing programs are vulnerable and that success is never guaranteed. One week can undo years of perceived dominance, especially when the content no longer resonates with the people it seeks to entertain. Jimmy Kimmel is still on the air, but the truth is clear. The numbers are falling, the viewers are walking away, and the show's future is increasingly uncertain. Disney may hold the reins, but in the court of public attention, the verdict has already been delivered. Kimmel's late-night reign is in sharp decline, and the audience has spoken. Will the legacy media tell you the truth? Will Rolling Stone run a headline admitting that Jimmy Kimmel lost 70% of his viewers in his first week back? Absolutely not. They will not say it. And here is why. They are not in the business of telling the truth. They are in the business of power. Here is the reality. The real problem for Disney now, with these affiliates back on board, is that Kimmel's numbers continue to plummet. Before his brief hiatus, he was drawing roughly 120,000 in the key demo. After his return, he dropped 60 to 70% in just the first week. It would not be shocking at all if he cannot even hit 100,000 going forward. In short, Disney has resurrected a dead show. Average-sized YouTube channels regularly outperform him now. By the end of Kimmel's tenure, Disney could be losing tens of millions of dollars on a show that small online creators routinely beat in ratings. Yet the mainstream media will try to paint him as some cultural powerhouse. Will Disney continue to air his show? Maybe. Will it make any financial or business sense? Absolutely not. This has never been about business. It has always been about political messaging and forcing a man who has long been a farce back onto the airwaves night after night. You, the audience, get to decide whether you will continue to support Disney after seeing this. I cannot make that decision for you, but the numbers speak for themselves. Jimmy Kimmel is back, but the viewers are clearly not. A 70% drop, yes, 70% is staggering. So help us get this message out. Click the like button, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Thank you for joining us this Sunday morning. We have more content coming your way. 3 more videos today alone. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep having fun. Music. Now, speaking of Disney, these colors and executives just do not match the tone of the company. Holiday is already positioning himself as the next CEO of Disney. That is laughable. He is clearly not qualified. Well, at least not for running a company, though he is perfect for being a corporate puppet. By all accounts, he functions like a foreign agent. Boundaries? Not a concern. Diversity points? Check. Green skin and a wig? Check. And most importantly, he loves to destroy and blow up everything, past and present, without discrimination. Honestly, you cannot argue with that. Meanwhile, the rest of us can only watch, read parkplace.com, and keep track of the chaos at Disney. And as always, magical experiences. Yeah, we are just supposed to nod along.